Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our 2019 Cycling Preseason Webinar. This is Zach Cintron, Sports Director for SOMD here. We also have Steve Bennett on the line, and we are going to be walking you through the preparation that you guys are going to need for your cycling seasons this year. As a reminder, before we get into the topics that we'll cover tonight, we're recording all the webinars so you guys can access them later if you need to. Additionally, if you have any questions, please use the question feature in GoToWebinar, or you can raise your hand. At that point, we will open up the line to let you ask a question. We will probably hold off until the end of the first section to take questions. But if your hand is up or if you type in a question and it is relevant to what we're currently speaking about, we will take that question. Again, We'll give you the season deadlines that you need to know going into this season. Certifications for head coaches remind you on what the process is for that this year. Give you a list of the qualifiers, how to qualify for state games, the events that will be offered for cycling this year, and then rules, reminders, rules changes. A lot of good stuff to prepare you guys for this season. Big reminder off the top, again, no athletes or volunteers can participate in any manner, practices, anything, competitions, if they do not have a valid medical on file for athletes or their volunteer application and forms are not filled out. Again, there's no exceptions to that policy. Here are those deadlines that you need to know going into the fall season here for cycling. The training registration deadline is on 8/29. Again, that's to get all your folks in that are training for this season. That makes them eligible to potentially go to Fall Fest. They need to be in on 8/29. Last date for missing forms is 9/10. That's missing forms for athletes that need medicals, coaches that need volunteer applications, protected behaviors, concussions, sports-specific trainings, CSOA for coaching Special Olympics athletes. Any of those things, that's the last day to get those in. And as a reminder, if an athlete has an expiring medical after that date, but still prior to Fall Fest, they still need to have it in by that date. Again, try to make sure folks aren't playing the game of getting paperwork in at the last minute on the date that their stuff is expiring. Try to get it in as early as possible. The final one on there is our competition registration deadline. That's the main registration deadline. If you have athletes going to Fall Fest that will be riding at Fort Ritchie, that is the date that they need to have all their stuff into GMS by. Whatever events that they're going to be in, qualifying times, all that kind of stuff, that's what the date that we need all that in by. To accomplish that stuff, the best way to do it is working with your area leadership. Again, all athletes, unified partners, coaches, and other volunteers have to have their proper forms in and submitted to us prior to any involvement with the program. Again, this is for the health and safety of our athletes. We want to make sure everyone's covered and taken care of when they're out there at practice. So if an issue does come up, an incident does happen, we're on top of it and can help you guys out. Again, coaches work with your respective area, county leadership, area directors. Some folks have sports coordinators in their areas. Work with those folks to get all the paperwork in that needs to get in, or if you need help getting that paperwork in. If you have a coach that comes to you and says, hey, I don't know where to find the concussion training, go to those folks and they can help direct you there. Additionally, while we're on that topic, we have a coaches resource page. We now have them for every sport throughout the year. And you can find all those forms on the main coaches resource page, along with a lot of cycling other specific information on the cycling page itself.
This is Steve. Just want to reiterate what Zach's saying in regards to specifically the athlete medicals. Not only to have them on file at the program office, but also here at the state office. But as coaches, you guys need to carry copies of those so that at practices or in transportation to Fall Sports Fest or to any other outing that you have that medical in case an emergency situation arises. There has been situations where coaches did not have that with them, thinking, well, the state office has it at the event. But in those transportation timeframes, or especially at practices, if something happens, you need to have that medical with you when you're overseeing the athlete's care. So just want to reemphasize that.
Yeah, again, it's quicker to pull a physical copy than it is for us to go online, get to our drive where everything's stored, get in there, search the person, find it, print it, going through that process. By that time, if somebody needs to be transported, that's too much time that we have to go digging through stuff. Coaches requirements. Again, all of the coaches for Special Olympics Maryland that participate with teams, programs, have to have following clearances, certifications prior to starting as a coach for the season. The big one out the gate is the current Class A volunteer application. So that's the main application for volunteers to just get rolling with the background check and stuff like that. Valid and current protective behaviors, online concussion training, coaching Special Olympics athletes, which is also CSOA, and then head coaches as well need sports-specific certifications. Again, all those certifications, when you get them, they are good for 3 years. You do have to renew after that, and there's a couple different ways to do that. Again, the main thing is for the date that you're looking at that it needs to be valid through, it needs to be valid through the competition date. So Fall Fest is on 10/19. All those certifications have to be valid through 10/19. This next slide, we really like. We put this in everything. Thankfully, Janet Larimore and Howard County put this together for us. It's a good visual representation of the coach's education plan. Again, I just kind of went through those certifications really quickly of what you need. But if you look specifically at this slide, it shows you breakdown by the type of volunteer type of what certifications specifically they need, and they build off one another. Again, general volunteers need that volunteer application and background check and protective behaviors. That's the very base level that everyone needs to volunteer with teams. And then from there it builds. The next step to become a sports volunteer, you need that concussion course. I really think the concussion course is good for everyone to have. At the end of the day, if you're going to be around the athletes, it's good to have that. And most sports, even outside of Special Olympics, require that at this point. Assistant coaches, the next step from there is that coaching Special Olympics athletes. And so you can either get that online. There's an online version of that, or we are holding in-person office trainings here in Baltimore in the headquarters office. I believe the next one is on the 17th of this month that you can still register for today. If you are looking for that link, you can contact us and we can help you get signed up for that training on the 17th. Finally, the last one for a head coach is that sports-specific training course. Most sports, we offer a training in person and a couple online trainings. You can find the listings for those trainings on the cycling resource page or any of the sport-specific pages for any other sports that you may be looking at.
And the advanced coach, just so everyone's aware, that's primarily for those that would be going to USA Games or World Games, that type of thing. So, again, the head coach is kind of the top tier here within Maryland. But by all means, the advanced coaches courses are available to anyone wanting to pursue further education.
Coach Code of Conduct, I'm not going to go through this. Most of you guys know the Coach Code of Conduct. You've seen it before. You guys do a great job of representing Special Olympics Maryland and the Coach Code of Conduct as a whole. Again, the main ideas are respect for others, ensure a positive experience for your athletes, your unified partners, your other volunteer coaches, anyone that's around the program. Act professionally and take responsibility for my actions. You guys are leaders of your programs. You're leaders of your teams. You want to set a good example for everyone that interacts with your team. Quality service to the athletes and unified partners. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. You want to create a good experience for them. And health and safety of the athletes and unified partners. As a coach in any sport, you always want to make sure you're taking care of your athletes and putting them in the best scenario to succeed at many levels. Going into qualifying competition. Again, what's the point of qualifying competitions? One, it's to get competition experiences for your athletes before they go to state competition, to get them not only in the flow of competing in that sport, but, even for the things that we do like staging. Staging takes a lot. There's a lot of steps and processes for going through staging, after you have done your races, going to awards, all those kind of things, preparing our athletes to be successful at events, not only in the sport that they're competing in, but all the phases of the event as a whole. In order to count as a qualifying competition, if you are hosting your own qualifying competition, the idea is that it's going to emulate the state level competition. So if you've been up to Fort Ritchie, you have an idea of what that's like. Again, following the sport safety rules and the general rules of the sport, even if it's just an in-house qualifier, you want to make that as competitive as an experience as possible to get them prepared for state level competition. Have appropriately trained refs and officials. Medical personnel on site. You never know when something's going to happen. It's good to have somebody on site just in case you need assistance. Ideally, we would like our qualifiers to include 3 or more areas or counties, but we do know that sometimes an in-house one is necessary. There's some programs that are really big that need it, and there's some programs that are a little bit smaller that want to figure out their own team first and then bring in other teams once they're ready to handle that next group of folks coming in. Again, another big point is if you are going to be holding a qualifier, make sure you get a sanction form submitted to your area director at least 30 days prior to that competition, so then they can pass along to us and we have an idea of when it's happening and we can help you promote it if you're looking to bring other folks in, or we have an idea of when it is so we can potentially come out and support you. I know throughout the season we like to get out to a couple different competitions and show our support and help you in any way that we can. So if we know 30 days out, it gives us more time to plan to help you guys out.
The other thing, as we always say, a minimum of the qualifying competitions, one of the things that the athlete leadership and the athletes' voices at Special Olympics Maryland have all continuously brought to our attention is we want more competition. As you can imagine, if you started a sport and you trained 8 to 12 weeks and had one competition, I wouldn't want to be coming back for that competition next year. So again, it's the camaraderie, it's the competition knowledge, it's a competition experience, so that they're at their peak performance level and understanding of what the rigors are of a state level championships, so they can do their best at those events.
Yeah, I think Steve did a great job covering that. Again, reminding everybody that meeting all the training and registration requirements prior to deadlines, and everybody's got their certifications and medicals up to date. Those are essentially the major things, and getting that minimum of 2 sanctioned competitions in. But again, like Steve was saying, if you can get more in or your athletes can get more opportunities, for sure, get them out to those opportunities. And I want to mention that those opportunities also include if there are other cycling clubs that our athletes are riding with or are offering competitions that our athletes can get into, it doesn't have to be specifically an SOMD qualifying competition. We'd love you to get 2 of those basically, and then any additional ones that you can get on top of that may come from external sources, we would also love your athletes to get into there. Again, you can have in-house qualifiers. That's something that we are very open to. We still want those in-house qualifiers to emulate the state competition. So we want you guys to have a good course set up and a good experience for your athletes to prepare them for competition, not just getting times for the sake of getting times. Again, at each qualifying event, each athlete must participate in the event that they intend to compete in at our Fall Sports Festival. So the races that they plan to ride at Fall Sports Festival, we want them riding in their qualifying competition as well. Again, going back to what I mentioned about external opportunities other than SOMD, some mainstream races of matching or greater distances. One that we do for long distance running, we host a tunnel run fundraiser. That counts as a qualifier towards long distance running folks as well. So that can be considered a sanctioned event as well. To give you an idea of some of the competitions for 2019, here's the list along with some of the deadlines and webinars that will pop up prior to Fall Sports Fest. We're on our webinar right now for preseason. The first competition coming up that we've been told about is Prince George's competition. That's on 8/25. Please reach out to Gretchen before planning on attending that. Before planning on attending any qualifier, always please reach out to whoever the organizer is. A lot of the times they're more than happy to have you, but they do have limits. Everybody obviously has their limits, and we don't want them to be surprised if you show up and they're not expecting you. And we don't want you to be surprised if you show up and they're not expecting you and you were planning on that potentially being a qualifier for you. That training registration deadline is on 8/29. And then right after that is our Sykesville competition at the police training facility on 9/7. If you are interested in attending that, please reach out to me. We have plenty of spots open for them. I was actually just out there the other day. They're very excited to have us again. So again, reach out to myself. My email is there if you are interested in attending Sykesville. The missing forms deadline pops up next on 9/10. SO Delaware does have a cycling classic that they have. It is on 9/21. If you are interested in that, I would reach out to Cheryl ASAP. They are trying to pull that together as early as possible this year, especially because it's on Dover Air Force Base. They need enough of a heads up far enough out to get names on a list to get everybody on base. Some of you that have been out to Annapolis and the Naval Base and stuff before, you have an idea of what that's like. The next one following that, in past years based on date, is usually St. Mary's. We're working on a date. We were going to work with Jim Russell to figure out what that date is. And if you have any questions about potentially attending St. Mary's, please reach out to Jim. And then the next big deadline is that competition registration deadline for Fall Sports Fest. Following that, right after that, we do have one new competition. Myself and Tom Estock have been having conversations with the folks at Sandy Point State Park. We're interested in potentially having one there. Right now, the thought process is that more than likely that is going to be a in-house qualifier this year that may open up as we move along. The events offered. Events offered have not changed this year. Again, athletes are allowed to compete in up to 2 events. The time trials events with the individual starts are the 500 time trial, the 1K time trial, and the 2K time trial. Road races with the mass starts, again, are our 1K, our 2K, our 5K, 10K, and 15K. A reminder on that 15K race, qualifying times of 40 minutes or less. Must have at least one competition score from 2019 going into it. So we're really looking for a good qualifying score on that 15K race to make sure that we can get everybody through that 15K race and the competition is a good experience for them. It's really tough to put somebody in that 15K race and then us have to pull them because they aren't finishing within the allotted time period. Modified cycles. Just a reminder again, athletes using modified cycles, your tricycles and other modified vehicles, can only be entered in those time trial events unless you've had a conversation with the person who is leading that event, whoever the event director is. If they approve it, in the case of Fort Ritchie, if you've had a conversation with myself, Steve Bennett, and we've approved that scenario, to move them into the road race, that is okay. But primarily, we are asking the adult tricycles and other modified bikes to be in the time trial events. Not going to go through too much of the rules, more or less rules reminders. If you are looking for rules, UCI is where you can go. And again, our national governing body is USA Cycling. If you're looking for the SOMD, and Special Olympics specific cycling rules, that link is at the very bottom. Rules reminders on coaching. Non-competitors are not allowed to follow competition in any vehicle, including bicycle, again, unless you've had a conversation with that event director. On top of that, coaches may coach from the course sidelines. Some ideas of permissible coaching, but is not limited to instructing the athletes of changing gears, advising athletes to slow or change speed. Again, however, the coach is not allowed to physically pace the cyclist. You're not allowed to run or bike alongside them, even out of bounds from the competition. Directional assistance will be provided by court marshals, so that's not something that you guys need to worry about. If an athlete needs a guide, you can also let us know that. That's a special accommodation that we are willing to work with. And of course, we always want you to encourage your athletes, cheer them on, give them that energy to make those last couple laps around, because those long races, they could definitely use it. I know I could use it. Coaching or other actions that hinder or distract another competitor is unsportsmanlike, and at that point could result in dismissal of that coach from the competition. Radio use for athletes and coaches is not allowed per Special Olympics rules. Again, you can communicate with them from the sideline of the race as they pass by, but you cannot, work with them via radio or any other device like that. Uniforms. Again, matching uniforms are recommended and are great, but they're not required. Helmets that meet the USA cycling safety standards are required, though. Appropriate pants, obviously, no jeans. Tighter cycling type of uniforms is the best way to go. Of course, we recommend socks, cycling shoes, cycling gloves, glasses for eye protection, hydration system, water bottle or something else that's attached to the bike. Those are all recommended as usual. Equipment reminders must meet USA cycling safety standards. Modified cycles will be inspected by officials just to make sure they're safe, not only for everybody else, but for that athlete as well. Everything must have 2 working brakes, must have at least one hand on the handlebars at all times. I mentioned the no radio communication devices, no headphones. Again, that's a safety thing for events and training. We want to make sure that our athletes' senses are open to everything around them. Any special aero equipment, aero helmet, disc wheels, skin suits used by a racer must be used at competitions in order to be used at the state competition. So if they use specific items like that, they have to use it at their qualifying competitions as well, because we don't want it to change their time that drastically when they get to state competition. Again, modified bicycles and adult tricycles. Modified cycles and adult tricycles are only permitted for time trial events unless you've spoken to that event director. A bicycle with handlebars for forearm support or extend forward, upward may be used in time trial events. Again, that's just giving you an idea of some of the tricycle and modified bike items that fall into that primarily time trial event description. Mechanical assistance. We have this pop up every now and then. Coaches may change a part or all bicycle during the race if a competitor experiences mechanical problems. Assistance is permitted in that situation. We're not going to ask the athlete to handle that themselves. And again, if a cyclist breaks down and needs assistance getting off the course, they may be pushed up to 10 meters following the crash or breakdown or flat tire, whatever it ends up being. An athlete can run with the bicycle to the finish line in cases of a crash, breakdown, or flat if they choose to do so. But one of the most important things is an athlete cannot make any progress on the course without the bicycle. So again, if there's an issue with the bike, they can progress not on the bike, but they have to be with the bike. Time trials consist of individual racing against the clock. Time trials in cycling are actual competitions. They're not preliminaries in the sense that for sport like kayaking, we hold a time trial to get qualifying times for our state championship. It's not describing the type of competition as in the whole competition itself. It's describing the event that they're in, and in that case, it's racing against the clock. Competitors should depart at 30-second or 1-minute intervals for time trials. You guys have seen how we do it at Fort Ritchie. Tracy and her team up there do a great job of timing that up so folks aren't bumping up on each other too much and they have a good spread. And the starters should count down to the starting time using both an audible, verbal or air horn, and a finger clock, counting down 3, 2, 1 for each rider. The notification of time remaining to start will be given at various intervals to advance the start. Again, those are just tips, especially if you're going to hold an in-house qualifier. Some good habits and methods to get behind moving into holding a qualifier. Again, for hearing impaired riders, a visual cue, flags work. I know we tend to use the start-stop flags that we use at track and field. We actually use them for a lot of events for that same thing. Riders start from a stationary position. they can't be pushed from that stationary position. I think that's one of the biggest things that's next on that list of starting from a stop. And the rider can start with one or both feet on the ground when they start. That's up to them. Use of modified bikes are only permitted in time trial events. Again, the chief referee, event director, whomever, will decide if a two-wheel modified bike can compete based on the number of competitors, course conditions, and ability levels of the riders. The road races. Road races are always that mass start that we always work with. No times are recorded for the road race because of the mass start, and awards are based on placing only. Again, at that point, we're counting laps more than we are counting time. Maximum effort is not applicable in road race finals because we are not counting time there. And then the start by the starter pistol or whistle. For hearing impaired athletes, again, we use that flag or arm drop to indicate the start of the clock/race, in this case the race, in addition to using the starter pistol and or whistle. So we always want to be giving a visual and an audible cue for the start of our races so athletes with varying needs can understand when the start of the race is. Again, the finish line is determined by placing or order of crossing the finish. If the course is more than 2.5 kilometers in length, more than one division may ride on the course at once. You see that at Fort Ritchie. We will do that in certain races depending on the distance of it. The divisions may be started in 1, 2, or 3 minute intervals. Prior to the race, competitors should have the opportunity to warm up and inspect the course. Any of our events that have longer distances, kayaking is another one, again, to reference that sport. We try to do course inspections just so the athletes can get familiar with the course that they will be on for most of the day. And if there's any issues, coaches, yourself, you can also spot them and talk to the event director and bring them up. We're more than happy to have the conversation and potentially put a fix or something that you're uneasy about, clearing that up for your athletes so you feel good about the race as well. The race will be declared finished when the front tire of the bike crosses the finish line. So we're going to open our section up to questions. I know Steve has been working on some questions as they've been coming in. But if you have any other questions at this time before we go into our next general section, you can type your question in, you can raise your hand, and we'll open your line. We have a couple different options here. All right. We got a question from Gretchen, Steve.
Yeah, the question from Gretchen, and I would have to go back and make sure it was which ones are time trials and which ones are road races. I think, and I would have to go back and double check. So
we can go back to that slide.
I think the 500 and the 1K are time trials, and 2K and further distances are road races.
There it is. You do have a 2K time trial as well.
Oh, there is it. Okay.
Yep. So like Steve was saying, you got the 5, the 1, and the 2K time trials, and then you got 1, 2, 5, 10, and 15 road races. All right. Do we have any other questions as we are scrolling back through to our question slide? All right. If we don't have any other questions here, we will go through our last handful of slides here. Again, if any questions, if any other questions pop up, we will go back and we can talk about those as well. So our final couple slides here are some general registration forms and procedures. Again, essentially what this is talking about is valid athletes for medicals. If you would like to go back and read through all of these slides, you're more than welcome to. We are not going to read through all of these slides together. Again, acceptable credentials for folks that can give athlete medicals, unacceptable credentials for folks that can give athlete medicals. And this is the actually actual athlete medical itself that we can go through. It's got 4 different pages in here, 5 different pages for the final waiver. Most of you have seen it. Most of you have dealt with it quite a bit. So if you have any questions, again, you can reach out. Volunteers, again, this is talking about the volunteer forms that are needed, the application, protected behaviors, concussion, CSOA, and this will talk about what's considered valid. If the volunteer is a minor, there's a different minor form instead of the background check. Again, this is going to give you a look at the volunteer application. Most of you have seen this probably multiple times at this point. So you know what you're looking at. Here's the volunteer minor student reference form. Quickly on first reports of accidents, incidents, most of you have seen those incident forms as well. You always want to have those at practice as well, just like the medicals. Again, if somebody goes down and skins their knee on the pavement or something like that, it could be as small as that. It can be a major injury. It can be an incident potentially that is a verbal conflict. There's a bunch of different things that can fall under that incident form, but it's always good to have those incident forms on you. If you need it, we have copies of that we can pass along to you as well. This is what it looks like. Again, most of you have probably seen this at some point in your Special Olympics careers. Hopefully you don't see it very much this season, because that'll be the best case scenario. Again, we're going to have the option here. If anybody has any questions, we will take your questions. But if you can't think of any right now, that's fine. You feel free to follow up with me. My email is there. Additionally, just a reminder for that coach's resource page. The coach's resource page has essentially everything that you'll need, forms, competition dates, and more. And then specifically the cycling coach's resource page will have competition dates, we'll have training dates, we'll have information for Fall Sports Fest once we start heading in that direction. At Fall Sports Fest, it'll have the results for our races and stuff like that. It's a very good resource to have. Quite honestly, I use it a lot, even on my computer day-to-day, because it's so easy to get to those resources when folks need them. If there's any other questions, we'll take them now.
Yeah, and as Zach stated, the coach's resource page, that's the link. You can also just Google Special Olympics Maryland and go to our home site, and then on that you will see the little tabs at the top. One of those is Coach, and you click on Coach, and there's a drop-down that says Coach's Resources, and you can click on that, and that'll take you to the overall resource page, and then it'll say for information on cycling. You can see where the cycling link is. But again, we've had a lot of great feedback from that website. A lot of people have been using it from summer games up through kayaking this past weekend. So it's a good resource. And again, if you see anything that you think would help you as a coach that's not there, please let us know if that's something we can put out. We definitely want to get feedback to make that very, very user-friendly for coaches and other people who are interested in Special Olympics or a specific sport.
Good quick note from Gretchen as a reminder, the concussion site from Heads Up through the CDC has been down the past couple days. I think they're working on getting it back up. I checked it the other day when somebody mentioned it to me as well, and I couldn't get in. We will keep an eye on that, and if there is a notice that it will be a prolonged downing for that website, we will let you know as well. But again, like Gretchen was saying too, hopefully it's back up in the next day or two. If we do not have any other questions, again, I'll remind you that if something pops up, if you think about it after the webinar, feel free to reach out to myself. I'll answer any questions that you guys may have. And more importantly, I just want to take some time to thank you guys in advance. I know a lot of you are in other seasons currently. I know you guys are going into big seasons, going into 2 sports, potentially 3 sports. I just want to remind you guys that we can't do Special Olympics in any capacity without you guys. And it's so important to us that you guys have a good experience along with the athletes and that your seasons are successful, because at that point, that's what gives you guys experience to come back year after year, take on multiple sports like you guys do. And we can't even thank you enough for all that you guys do year in, year out, season in, season out. So again, we can't thank you enough, and we appreciate the work that you guys put in every day for Special Olympics. Thank you. Again, thank you guys for everything you do. We're really excited for this cycling season. We're excited to working with you guys, and we will see you all very soon at many of these competitions.
Thanks, everyone, and good evening.